Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Express columnist and broadcaster Carole Malone and the editor of the Courier in Dundee, David Clegg. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Excuse me, the Daily Mail reports on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's warning to the House of Lords not to defy the will of the people and block, the Rwanda bill after it passed the House of Commons. The Financial Times leads with the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, suggesting that he wants to introduce further tax cuts and may even hold two budgets before the election later this year. The Express too has that story. Hunt plots big tax cuts in budget. The Eye reports exclusively that a government inquiry has begun into what it calls a second scandal involving computers at the post office, which may have led to more wrongful convictions of sub-postmasters. The Guardian leads with comments from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has told the White House he rejects any moves to establish a Palestinian state when Israel ends its offensive against Hamas. The Times is leading with a report that teachers are locking themselves in classrooms for safety and installing no-go zones due to unruly pupils. And David's paper, The Courier, reports on the arrest of the brother-in-law of Scotland's First Minister after a man fell to his death from a block of flats in Dundee. The Mirror focuses on the UK's dental health crisis as new figures show more than 100,000 children were taken to hospital with rotten teeth over 5 years. The Sun leads with Prince William's concern after visiting his wife, the Princess of Wales, in hospital as she recovers from abdominal surgery. And the Metro tells us that the NHS's advice for how to avoid slipping and falling on ice is to waddle like a penguin. I hope they explain how exactly to do that. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Carole Malone and David Clegg. Great to see you. Thank you so much for coming in. OK, let's take a look. I guess no surprises, really, when we see that migration is in many of the front pages. Let's look at the Daily Mail front page. Don't defy the will of the people. Rishi Sunak warns the Lords. And, of course, he's passed the hurdle in the Commons, and now he's going to spend weeks in the Lords. Carole, what do you make of the phrase that he used, defying the will of the people?
I mean, I think he's saying that because this week there was a poll that said 9 out of 10 constituencies across the country want to control immigration and they want to stop the boats. So, and 75, I think, out of 650 constituencies across the country felt the same thing. So I think he felt able and empowered to say that, having seen those polls this week. But, he said that this morning in his speech, before lunchtime today. And the bill was then passed to the Lords and they were shouting shame the minute the bill came in. And, this is a bunch of unelected, unaccountable people, many of whom are there because of favours that were done to them by, various governments and various prime ministers. And to me, this feels like a rerun of the Brexit process. It's like unelected people thinking they know what's best for the British people and trying to decide that for them. And I just think it's monumentally patronising of them to do this. The people who are in the Lords will never suffer the effects of uncontrolled immigration. They will never be shoved to the bottom of a housing queue. They will never not be able to get to an appointment with a doctor or get their kids into a school. And yet here they are saying that this policy must not pass. There is no alternative to the Rwanda plan at the moment. It's not ideal. If it was more robust, it might be ideal, but there is no way of stopping the boats. And what the Lords have said they're going to do, which is really Machiavellian, I think, they want to delay it, and they've actually put forward a process now where they want to prove to them that sending people to Rwanda was safe. They know that is going to delay any passing of legislation, which means that there'll be an election first, Labour will get in, and Starmer will chuck out Rwanda in any shape or form. So it's really Machiavellian. They're deciding what's going to happen.
Machiavellian seems a strange word. I think there's a couple issues about the Rwanda plan. You can question the morality of it. You can, I think, where it falls down most likely is the feasibility of it, whether it is logistically going to work and whether it will act as a deterrent in the way in the way that they hope. And I think equally you can make the point, Carole, that the House of Lords is unelected, and should we have an unelected second chamber? And what is the legitimate?
No,
What is the? Well, that was the way.
I don't want to get into whether we should have a second chamber. I personally think we do, but I don't think that's the argument. I think this is a bunch of people
you said they're
who
unelected.
don't have a mandate from the people, and who this has been passed by Parliament. This has been passed by the Commons,
Certainly.
and they're going to thwart it.
But we have a revising chamber in the UK,
Yes,
and it is the House of Lords, and we can question about the way that is composed or how it is set up. But if you're the Conservative government and you're regularly placing your supporters in the House of Lords, you can't really undermine it then as a concept. You've got to accept it. You've got to accept the game as it's set up, and it is the job of the House of Lords. The very definition of the House of Lords to scrutinise legislation brought forward to the government, which is what they're doing.
So if they were seriously going to debate this, why were they shouting shame when the bill was presented to them today? They've already decided. They know what they're going to do. And already many peers have said how they're going to do it, how they're going to thwart it and delay it.
Let me just bring in the front page of the Telegraph.
Yeah,
because
sure.
you've also picked up an article that is on the same story, but I guess a slightly different point. So front page of the Telegraph, not sure if we can pull it up, but basically the headline is Lords plan to delay Rwanda law led by Labour. So, David, what is the angle? What is the story?
This is Lord Goldsmith's, Tony Blair's old Attorney General during the Iraq War, actually. It was quite a high-profile role at the time then. And he has put forward something that was going to be debated on Monday, as I understand it, which would delay... the delay a motion of the Lords that would seek to halt the ratification of the treaty until the government can show that Rwanda is safe for asylum seekers. Now, that's obviously something which has dominated debate for months. It seems to me that it's quite difficult to know how you would meet that test and what that test would be. The Telegraph report on the front page tomorrow says they've set out a 10-point plan for new laws and judicial measures that ministers in Rwanda must put in place before the treaty can be endorsed. We'll need to look at the detail of that and examine it, but the suspicion would be that this is something that is setting it up to fail.
But what's interesting is they have decided they don't like the Rwanda plan. And it is interesting at this time that countries all over Europe and many of the Schengen countries are already trying to come up with their own Rwanda plan. Italy already has one, an agreement with Albania. A lot of them want to have a process where migrants are processed offshore. They're all trying to do it, and yet in this country, we have a bunch of the elites trying to thwart it, which will mean there is no way to stop those crossings. And in fact, the only other way to do it is to ignore any ruling from the ECHR. That's the only way you're going to stop the boats.
That type of thing is an issue for debate, I think, in a lot of countries that have similar policy.
Well, they're trying to do it. A lot of countries are scrambling around now, trying to get exactly that.
I have to say, in Italy's case, they are also having legal issues, and I think they will process the claims, I think, an Italian government represents. So it's slightly different. But yes, a lot of other European countries are all trying to plan together.
But I think ultimately, what the last few days is shown here is that Rishi Sunak really struggled with the Tory rebels. He's struggling internally. Yeah. He's facing resistance from Labour, obviously. He's facing resistance from the House of Lords. The public may back the principle of stopping the boats. Whether the public properly understand the detail of the Rwanda scheme or support it in its nature, I think is more debatable. And it feels to me that it's just another example of how Rishi Sunak really is not in control.
He's not in control. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I think, he said 2 days ago, it was a splash in one of the papers, where he said, I will ignore the ECHR. No, he won't. We know he won't. He's got no intention of doing that. This is why voters, this is why the electorate have no confidence in anything the Tories say anymore about immigration, and that's a problem.
And I guess maybe that's why we're seeing on the FT again, page 1, Jeremy Hunt focusing on taxes. This is obviously election year. So there's the front page of the FT and Jeremy Hunt signalling he wishes to cut taxes and hold 2 budgets before the next election. I mean, surely when people go to the polls, migration is unquestionably an issue, but the economy, I'm guessing, trumps everything, and taxes.
The economy's stupid. I think that is correct, especially with the cost of living crisis, with the tax burden being what it is in the UK at the minute, with the real pinch that so many people are feeling. I think that's undoubtedly true. What I find depressing, actually, about this story and the nature of the way that I was going to say it's being covered, but I think the actual case is the way it's being spun by the Conservatives is that this is all about an electoral calculation. It's not suggesting that these tax cuts would be good for the economy or that that's the primary consideration here. It's how can we win back ground from Labour? And in fact, the parallel it's drawn in the Financial Times report, as the Financial Times describes it, auspicious precedent for this idea that there could be two kind of fiscal events, a budget and then an autumn statement before what would be a very late election in November, is John Major, who won an unexpected election victory in April 1992, announced the vote the day after his Chancellor Norman Lamont introduced a 20p income tax rate in his March budget. So the suggestion here is going to be that the Tories are going to pull some rabbits out of the hat with big tax cuts, and that's going to change the dynamic of the election. I think that may be very wishful thinking from this perspective.
Oddly enough, I agree with you. This is what gets me about the Tories now, the way they are in their current form. They are treating the electorate like fools. This is a bribe, pure and simple. This is a bribe saying, hang on with this and we'll cut your taxes. They had a chance to cut taxes months ago and they haven't done it.
Let me just pull up the front page of your paper, the Daily Express. And again, a headline there, Hunt plots big tax cuts in budget. So...
Yeah, it is. This is I'm looking at it as a journalist. I'm thinking this is a bribe. People sitting at home are looking at it and thinking exactly the same thing. And to me, it just strikes it's too little, too late. If you're going to do it now, so we can see the results of the tax cuts.
You've somehow manoeuvred me into defending them now, Carole.
Good.
I'm not quite sure how you've managed it. What I would say is most political parties in an election year will have a retail offer for the electorate. They will have something that they will offer them. This is the benefit that you will see in your pocket if you happen to vote for us. I think what is different and reeks of desperation and is probably too calculating is it almost seems that everything the government is doing at the minute is all a premeditated attempt to try and swing this election. That is not a recipe for stable governance.
Maybe if they hadn't been doing so badly, people would be willing to accept the bribe. But I think they've performed so badly over the past couple of years, people aren't.
We're going to have to leave it there for now, but we'll, of course, talk about this again. But first, Tata Steel is cutting nearly 3,000 jobs in an effort to go green. We'll be discussing that right next. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Carole Malone and David Clegg. OK, let's go back to the front pages. Let's go to the Financial Times. Let's bring it up. Tata to lay off 2,800 Port Talbot staff before shift to greener steelmaking, and there should be an official announcement tomorrow. But Carole, what do you make of this?
It is catastrophic for Port Talbot. I'm sure all the climate change bod will be saying this is fantastic. But I come from a community, the northeastern mining community, there where when the mines closed, I saw what happened to those communities. They're finished. They're over. You will have men working in these furnaces that will never work again. And then they become, that does terrible things to people's psyche, to their minds, to the way, to their style of life. It's catastrophically bad. And although it's nearly 3,000 jobs, it's UK-wide, most of them are going to be from the Port Talbot site, which is just, and they're going to be gone by as early as September. So these people just don't have, this is the worst case scenario for this. And, I know people can talk glibly about progress and about, it's going to be cleaner air and all the rest of it, but you're talking about destroying lives here. And it's hard for me to see anything good in this.
It's clearly devastating for the local community, but actually a line in the Financial Times report that really caught my eye was the cut means that by 2025, the UK will be the only major economy with no ability to make steel from scratch, which seems like, as an infrastructure resource. There was a massive scandal in Scotland when it emerged that the new Forth road bridge had been built with Chinese steel, despite there traditionally having been such steel manufacturing in Scotland. This is going to mean that there's nowhere that's able to do it in the UK. So terrible news for Port Talbot and the wider Welsh economy, but also, I think, really bad for the UK as a whole if we get to that stage.
Completely.
Let's take a look now at page 3 of the Metro. Part of the royal health stories, both the King, of course, and the Princess of Wales feeling unwell. Here it says William drives to Kate's bedside as she recovers from the operation. I mean, obviously, everyone, wishes that they both get well. What have you made of the reporting, Carole, and the fact that I guess, years ago we would never have known this kind of detail? Do you like the way things have developed?
I'm old enough to know that, to remember that. And I'm older. In fact, it wasn't that long ago that the palace, would put out half-truths about what was going on, and then they'd be slated for that. I think they've protected her privacy here because they're not saying exactly what it is. I mean, there's lots of speculation as to what it is, and I'm sure that will come out eventually. And the palace more or less hinted today that she will talk about it at some point. I think what is really interesting with the Charles story, the prostate cancer story, this is a sign of the times that a 73-year-old man, never mind that he's the king, but he is the king, but he's 73 years old, and it is a sign of the times that he's willing to weaponise, PR his ailment to help other people, which is a great thing. I think it's a big step for him.
And inquiries of a prostate cancer have shot up since he...
Completely. And so, I think that must have been quite hard for him. He's essentially a very private man. But the palace there say he was keen to do this, which is fantastic. With Kate, I'm sure we will hear what has happened with her. But it's no small thing that's happening to her. Because,
2 weeks.
2 weeks, no one stays in hospital for 2 weeks for almost anything anymore. If it was some of the things that have been in the papers today, speculation, you're in 2 or 3 days if it's keyhole, whatever. This clearly wasn't.
30 seconds, David.
Go. Sorry, I stole your time.
I was happy just listening to Carole talking about the old days when the royals were lying to us. If you could imagine such a thing. I think clearly there's a great deal of interest in this. All the papers have covered it widely, and I think it's right that the actual details are not reported. And the king has given more detail than perhaps he had to about what's gone on in his situation, and there has been, I think, a positive health awareness impact of that. So I think that is a very positive thing, and we all wish Kate well and with whatever's going on.
We certainly do. David, Clegg, Carole Malone.